I'm going to turn off your drawing tools. Sorry, guys. Alrighty, so a couple of things that we'll be talking about in this workshop is how to create announcements using the content editor, use the email feature to contact students within Blackboard, how to post, manage, and grade discussion forums and threads, access and grade an assignment using the inline grading features, grade tests using grade by question and grade by attempt, and then where to locate and update student grades in the Grade Center. So it is a very full workshop, but you do learn a lot from it, and you can always go back to your activities and redo them. We will give you time during this workshop as well. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is communicating with students. So this right here, this picture on the left, is called the content editor. So the content editor, you'll see it in multiple places in Blackboard. You'll see it in anywhere where you can add text. So the content editor is useful to add and format text, insert links and hyperlinks, attach files and media, and embed media. So this top bar right here, a lot of these tools you've probably seen using, like Word doc, for example. Change font, change the size of the font, add bullets. One tool that I wanted to show you is this eraser button. So a lot of times what happens is if you have a lot of content or a lot of information you want to put into the content editor to post, for example, like an announcement, we recommend using like a Word doc first and then pasting it into the content editor, just because we don't want Blackboard to time out on you and you lose all your work. So what ends up happening is when you paste your content or your information over, a lot of the formatting comes with it, and you might not want that formatting. So this eraser tool will help you get rid of that formatting and then work on it using the content editor. This second row, this is where some alignment. One thing I wanted to bring your attention here is the links. So these two right here is where you can add hyperlinks or remove hyperlinks. And then this last row right here is where you can add attachments from your computer. You can add images. We have a mashup tool where you can add YouTube videos and Flickr photos. So there's a lot of things you can do with the content editor, and it's super useful to know how to use it, especially when you are a GA or TA. So the first tool that we will be talking about is announcements. So announcements, there's a dedicated space in the course available to all course users, and they can also be sent as emails. So announcements are useful for when you need to make an announcement to the entire class. So for example, if there's a due date coming up, changes in your syllabus, if there's corrections or clarifications on material that you need to make, if there's an exam schedule that you need to post, the announcements page is where you will do it. I will show you how to post an announcement once I share my screen. Now, there's a difference between announcements and email. So the email tool, it's an integrated tool that allows you to compose and send emails to course users without leaving Blackboard. So you can email specific users, specific groups, all your students, all lead teaching assistants, just the instructor. However, the email tool, so once you send an email out to a student, for example, they will get it to their external Outlook inbox. So they won't be able to see it on Blackboard, they will get it to their email. If they were to email you back, you will get the email in your Outlook inbox. So there is no, you can't get emails to Blackboard, and you can't see the stream of emails in Blackboard. The email feature is only useful to send emails specifically to certain users using the course. So I have a little activity here for you. I'm going to turn on the polling option. So we have 5 questions, and I'm going to give you the option of choosing either email or announcement. One sec here. Okay, so the first scenario we have is you are going to, so you're the GRTA of this course, and you're going to be having a joint class with another section for a guest speaker today using Teams. So in this case, would you send an email out to the class, or would you send an announcement out to the class? Okay, most of you are getting it right. That's good. Yeah, so I see most of you. Yeah, so perfect. Yes, that exactly would be an announcement just because it'll be sent to that entire class, and you need to let the entire class know that there will be a guest speaker. So the second one is one of the groups has yet to submit their proposal for an upcoming assignment. Now, for this case, exactly, would you email or send an announcement? Perfect. Most of you have gotten it right. It is email. So in this case, it's a specific group that needs to send the assignment in. So you would send an email to that group and let them know, like, hey, your assignment's late, you need to submit. You wouldn't have to let the entire class know in that case. Number 3, due to a change in your schedule, your office hours are moved for the week. So send a new update out. That's awesome. You guys, yeah, you guys hit it right on the nail. Yeah, it would be an announcement because you need to let the entire class know that your office hours are changing. Number 4 is you are requesting to have a meeting with a student for remedial support around course concepts. So would that be an email or would that be an announcement? Okay, yeah, it seems like most of you have got the hang of this. Yes, it would be an email. And then we have our last one, number 5. You want to share some observations about student engagement during labs with the instructor and other GAs and TAs. Yeah, perfect. You guys got this one right as well, which I'm very impressed. Yes, it would be sent as an email, just because that would be considered private information. The other students wouldn't need to know about that, so it would be sent as an email. Thank you, guys. Okay, so now I'm going to share my screen with you guys, show you how to use the content editor by creating an announcement and sending an email. So give me 1 sec here. I'm going to share my screen. Make sure this is working. Perfect. Okay. So I am in my Blackboard course right now. I'm going to use my sandbox. And when you're wanting to add content or create an announcement, you want to make sure your edit mode is turned on. So your edit mode button is up here. So if I turn this off, I am not able to add content in any section. However, if right here, it should be a create announcement button. If I press toggle on, it'll appear right here. So when creating an announcement, you're going to click on announcements, create announcement, and you can update the class about your office hours. So you can say office hours have changed, and then let them know, like, hi class, my hours have shifted from Tuesday to Thursday this week. Best, and then you sign it, yeah. So you write in your content editor. You can use some of the tools here as well. So if you wanted to like bold this, if you bold, you can add an underline, whatever you'd like. You can format it the way you would like. Here's where you can add a date restriction. You can add one if you want to, like a display after and display until. However, most people just leave it as not date restricted. You can send a copy of this announcement immediately, like as an email. You can do that as well. You don't have to, but you can. And then if, let's say, you have an announcement that needs attention for another area. So for example, like, let's say this announcement was assignment 1 is now available, and you can post a link and browse to find this assignment 1 in the course. So once you're happy with your announcement, you can press submit, and your announcement will be posted just like that. You can always shift your announcements as well by using this purple bar. Just have to hover over it, hold it, and shift. If you want to edit your announcement, you just have to click on this chevron here, press edit, and it will take you back to that main page that you can edit and change the words of it as well. So as for email, you go to the email feature. You'll get a list of the different types of groups you can email. So for time's sake and for simplicity, we will email a single user. So single/selected users, I'm going to click on that. And I don't have that many students in my course, clearly, but in your case, when you are an actual GATA for a class, you will have a list of students here. So let's say I wanted to email my student user. You just have to make sure that they shift over to selected. So let's say my student user did not submit an assignment, so you can say like assignment 1 is late. So you can let the student know like, hi Ronak, I have not received your assignment. Make sure that's the right received. Please send it to me by the end of the day. That's and Ronak GA. So you can email the student, and then once you're happy with the email, you have the content editor. Again, you can make those formatting changes wherever you'd like. And then once you press admit, that email will be sent to that student's external Outlook inbox. So that's how you would email someone. So now that you know how to email and to send an announcement, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pull up this PowerPoint again. Okay, now it is your turn. So if you guys go to your course, the GATA Sandbox, you have activity 1A and activity 1B. So the first activity, you're going to send an announcement using your sandbox. And the second activity is to send an email using Blackboard. So we'll give you 5 minutes to complete this activity. So it is 3:17 right now. So we'll be back at 3:22. So you guys can go ahead and we will come back at 3:22.
All right, everyone. The time is 3:22. Now let's move on to other topics. And this is Newit. Now I am going to talk to you about the assessment tool that we have in Blackboard. We have different kind of assessment tool in Blackboard, and the selection of the assessment tool should depend upon your learning outcome or learning objective. In today's presentation, we'll talk about three major assessment tool, that is discussion board, assignment, and then tests. I will now talk about discussion board assessment tool. This discussion board assessment tool can be used either for a casual conversation, or you also can use it to grade your student. Um, this discussion board acts as a, I would say, an avenue to have a dialogue between the student. They can use this discussion board to kind of have a casual conversation, kind of a water cooler, or you can also use this tool to grade the student. There are two best practices, I would say, in terms of discussion board. Uh, we recommend you to allow subscribing to the post. In that way, your students can subscribe to a forum or a thread, and then they'll get an email notification reminding them to kind of contribute to the discussion board. This discussion board can also act as a powerful tool where you can use it to answer some of your common questions, that is to use as a forum. So let's talk about some of the discussion board settings, and then the options. So let me get my pointer first. I'll first talk about the forum availability. So this particular setting is quite common, not just in discussion board, but also in some of the other tools such as assignment, test. So this particular setting, you can use this setting to limit the availability of your discussion board or a forum. Once you select this to be available, it is immediately available to your student. However, if you set a display until or display after a window, that particular forum will be only displayed in that particular date and time range. And again, these display after and display until options are optional. Next is forum settings. So you can change the setting of a forum. Uh, Default is a standard view. And if you select the second option, which is where you enforce your participants to make a post in order to see anything in the forum, if you select the second option, you will lose, or your students will lose, the ability to post anonymously. And as I said earlier, you can also use this discussion board for a casual conversation or to grade their work. If you are using it for a casual conversation, you select the first option where you can post in the forum. And again, if you are using it to grade, select the second option and give it a point possible. Moving on, you can allow your students to subscribe to a forum and a thread. In that way, as I said earlier, it'll send an email notification to the student if anything new is posted in that forum or a thread. In that way, it'll act as a reminder for the students to come back in and then contribute to the discussion board. You can also select whether you want to allow anonymous posts or not. And one thing that I would have to mention here is that you can check force moderation of posts. What that does is, if you enable this or check this checkbox, uh, you would have to moderate anything that goes into the discussion board. Let's say if a student submits something or writes something on a discussion board, that goes through a approval procedure that comes to you first. You take a look, you approve or deny it, and then depending upon your action, you can post it or not. And this picture right here illustrates about the hierarchy or a structure of discussion board. Consider discussion board course tool as a main folder, and then within that folder comes discussion forum, and then inside that these threads are nested within the discussion forum. I'll explain all of this again when I do a demonstration. And now, if you have used a discussion board to grade the discussion threads or forum, what happens is if somebody comments or writes something on a discussion board, it'll come under needs grading, and you as a GOTA would go in under needs grading and then access their submission, and which will look something like this, that we have shown in the screen right here. And from that screen, what you can do is you can also reply to that particular thread from the bottom from the button which is down at the bottom left corner, and then you can use this grade box to give them a score. And if you have used rubric in that discussion board, which you can, then you can use rubric to grade the response. And this section right here is used to give them a feedback. And let me remind you, the feedback should always be constructive or formative. And then once you are done, you can hit submit. And one more thing I would like to point out in this screen is that this little section, which is called add notes, this is for your grading staff for a private note. This note, whatever you write here under this add notes section, would not be visible to student. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to switch to one of my demo course and then show you how to create a forum and then post in that forum and then subscribe it and then show you how you could grade the forum as well. So give me a minute while I switch my screen here. Yep, so this is my demo course, demo sandbox. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this discussion board content area, and then now I'm going to create a forum. Let's name this forum as your favorite. And then I am going to ask you about your favorite sport and then your favorites team. Going down. Yes, under this forum availability, if this is selected to be yes, it is immediately available to your student. And for this demo purpose, I'm going to skip this display after and display until a time window. But if you wish to, you can always set up a display after and display until date. I'm going to skip this. So check this, uncheck this checkbox. Moving down, as I said earlier, the default option is standard view. And if you select the second option, which is this one, then it disables anonymous post and some of the other options. So we recommend using the standard view unless you want to enforce upon your students that they have to post something in order to view anything on your discussion board. So I'll go with the default option, which is standard view. And then I'm going to use this to grade the responses. When I do that, I get additional options. So the point possible, let's say, is 10 in for this instance, and then I want to display the responses under needs grading after every single post or after one post. You can change the number from here, but for this demo purpose, I'll keep it to be 1, which is a default option. And then due date. Due date, again, this is an optional field. You can have a due date or wish not to. So in this case, I'll skip this portion and not have any due date. And if you have any rubrics, you can always attach rubric and use that rubric to grade the discussion threads. So you can add the rubric from this button right here. For this demo, again, I will skip this part. If you guys are interested to learn more about rubric, my teammate can post in a chat. They'll walk you through or talk more about rubrics and all. And then I'll also keep it as default and allow students to subscribe to the forum and then the thread. And I'll keep as it is default and then hit submit. So once it is submitted, I do see the forum created right here. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to switch to a student preview. So this again, this inter-student preview is a powerful tool that we have within the Blackboard, which will allow you to see your course exactly how your student would see. So you can enter a student preview from this top right corner by clicking on this little eye-like icon. That'll take you into the student preview. And this is how your student would see the course. Now to access that discussion board that we just created, I'll go into this discussion board and then I'll see that a forum right there. Click on that and then I'll click on create a thread. Now in this, now I'm going to answer the question, which is favorite sport is soccer, and then favorite sports team for me is Manchester United. And if you wish to attach any kind of file, you can do that under this attachment section. Once you're done, hit submit. Now they'll appear inside the forum as a thread. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to switch to instructor view, and then I'm going to grade this submission. So what I'll do is I'll exit the preview, preserving all the data. So I'll click on the second option which says keep the preview user data and continue. Now I am inside the course as an instructor, and then you can grade your you can grade the submissions in a couple of ways. You can either access those from a full grade center or needs grading. I will go inside needs grading, and you'll find that submission right here under needs grading, and you can either access that from here or just click on that user attempt. That'll take you to the to the discussion forum. And now this is how you'd see it. And then as I mentioned earlier, if you wish to reply, you can reply it from here. And I'll cancel this for now. So you can reply it from here, and you can use this grade box to give them a grade. So let's say I did a great job, so I'll give 10 out of 10, and the feedback job. And this add note section, this is again a private note section. This is only visible to your grading staff, not to your student. And once you're done, you hit submit. This is pretty much about discussion board and how to grade them. Now let me stop sharing my screen and then switch back to the presentation. Yep, so now it is your turn, guys, to complete the activity 2A and 2B. The details are given in your activity sheet, and it is 3:36. We will meet at 3:41.
Alrighty, so it is 3:41. If you guys can make your way back to the workshop. If you didn't finish, it's okay. You will have time to do it after the workshop. The activity sheets and the site will be open to you, so you can finish it at a different time. So we are going to move on to assignments. So assignments basically act as a Dropbox for students to submit files for grading online. So there's three different types of assignments. There's individual assignments, group assignments, and portfolio assignments. So the two that you should focus on more is individual and group. Portfolio isn't typically used. The only faculty that I know of that uses it is engineering. Attempts. So you can have different attempts for the assignment. So there's single attempts, there's multiple attempts, and there's unlimited attempts. So when you are creating the assignment, you have the option of choosing one of the three, and then you can always go back and change it. Safe assign. So safe assign, basically it provides information, a percentage, based on the document of the student. So it's not necessarily an answer, but it's just basically information about where the information on the document was pulled from. So for example, if let's say a student has a 70% safe assign score, that's considered a higher score, depending on what the assignment is, of course. I would talk to your grading team and the professor on what you want to do, what they want to do when it comes to students that have high safe assign scores. So when you do enable safe assign, you are able to see where the information was pulled from. So the percentage will take you to the different resources that the student might have used. Now it depends if the student's work was referenced, if it was an assignment where everyone's supposed to have the same answer. So it just really depends on the assignment itself, and based on how high or low the safe assign score can be. The last thing, delegated grading and anonymous grading. So these two features are highly not recommended by the university. I'll show you where they are when I share my screen. However, we don't recommend you use them. If your professor wants to do something like delegated grading or anonymous grading, then we recommend reaching out to CTL and we can help you do that in a different way and not use those features. So where do you access the assignment? So once the student has submitted the assignment, where do you go to grade it? So like Nuit showed you, you go to where it says needs grading. So this acts basically as a collection of submissions that require review. Once you have graded it and you've put a grade into the assignment, it will disappear from the needs grading center and go into the full grade center, where that is basically a spreadsheet of all the student information and grades. So like their student ID, their student number, and then the other assignments that you've graded, discussion posts, exams, etc., etc. So when it comes to grading the assignment, we basically use an inline grading tool called BB Annotate, which allows you to annotate directly on supported documents. So there's a lot of supported documents that BB Annotate accepts, including PDF, Word, PowerPoint, image files, source code. This is where you can provide your students with feedback. It allows you can do written feedback, audio feedback, video feedback. This is where you can also see that rubric tool I sent a link in earlier. And this is where you'll also be able to see that safe assign score. So this is what the grading looks like. And this is that safe assign score. So here it says 68% overall match. This is where you can put the grade in. And if you click on this arrow, you'll get more information where you can type in feedback and provide private feedback, like Nuit mentioned, to the grading team as well. So I'm going to share my screen, create an assignment, show you the grading view, grade the assignment, and submit the grade. So give me one sec here to share my screen. Share application. There we go. Give me a sec here. Perfect. So I am in my Blackboard site. I'm going to use my sandbox and make sure your edit mode is turned on or you won't be able to create any content. So if I go under assignments And under assessments, I can build an assignment. So let's say this is assignment 1 of the course, a pestle analysis. Now you can provide instructions in 2 ways. You can write instructions into the content editor, or if, let's say, the professor has sent you a document, a PDF file of the assignment or project, you can save that to your computer and browse your computer to attach a file. So you could do it in 2 ways. For this demonstration, I'm going to paste it into the content editor. So I gave them the 2 questions that they have to answer, the due date of the assignment, the submissions won't be accepted. I even gave them the format of what it should look like. So 12-point font, Times New Roman, in a Word doc, max words 750. So you scroll down, you can have a due date, you can put that in. So for our demonstration, we have January 18th at 11:59 p.m. There we go. Grading, so how much is this worth? You can make it out of 100 points. You can make it out of 50 points, whatever you and your grading team decide. So for this demonstration, I'll put 10 points. This is where you can add that rubric in. So you can, if there's already a rubric created, you can select the rubric, you can create a new rubric. Now that's up to you and your instructor and how you want to do it. If you want to grade using rubrics within Blackboard, or you can have an external rubric like in a Word doc or a PDF, whatever way you guys want to do it, basically. Going to submissions, so this is where you can choose if it's an individual submission, group submission. So group submission only work if there's groups created in the Blackboard site, but since there isn't in mine, we'll just leave it as individual. Attempts, so this is where you can change from single attempts, multiple attempts, unlimited attempts. I'm going to leave it as single. Plagiarism tool, so this is where you can enable that safe assign. So you can click to, click this to enable it. And then you can also allow the students to view their own safe assign score. So this is kind of like a teaching moment for them. They'll be able to see what their report is, the originality of their report. Grading options. So this is those 2 features I mentioned earlier that we do not recommend. It says it in big bold letters, do not recommend. Delegate grading, anonymous grading. They're here, but just I wouldn't use them. Display of grade, so how you want the students to see the grade. If you want them to see it out of like 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, you want to see a percentage, if it's just an incomplete, complete. There's also a secondary option that you don't really need to use, but you can if you want, where it'll only show you that secondary option in the grade center. Include the calculation in the grade center. I would keep that on. And then this is where you can basically let the students see their grade as they're being graded. So if you submitted a student's grade, then they would automatically get it. You can turn this on or off. Some professors, what they like to do is they like to grade all the student assignments at once, and then let the students see their grade together, where after everyone's been graded, then they will release the grades to the students. So you can always ask the professor how they prefer they want to do it. Sometimes they want to review before you let them see their grades. So it just depends on that. Make available to the students. So let's say you made this assignment earlier, but it doesn't get posted until, let's say, like this coming Friday. So you can have a display after and a display until date. So display after, so let's say we are gonna let students have access to this assignment on the 8th at 7 p.m., let's say, for example. Oh, I guess I'll just use the clock. 7 p.m. and display until the due date, which was the 18th at 11:59 p.m. So make sure you have this clicked. So if you have display after and display until dates put into place, make sure you have this clicked on, because if you unclick this, then these will not be honored. This button overrides the dates. So make sure you have this clicked on and then have these dates in place if you would like, and then press submit. So if you don't want to have dates in place, or if you want the assignment to be posted like right now, then you don't really need these. You can just turn them off. So it just depends on when you're posting and how you're posting it. So I'm going to turn these off. I'm going to press submit. And if you scroll down, the assignment is posted right here. So when the student clicks on it, they should be able to see the information, the due date, the points possible. They can browse their computer and send their assignment in, basically. So once they send their assignment in, where does it go? It goes into that needs grading under the grade center. So if I click on needs grading, you can see there is an attempt here already posted. So I'm going to click on it and grade all users. So this is the assignment. There's already a couple annotations already made. So this is the annotation, the BB annotate tool that I mentioned earlier. So you can add, you can use the brush option. You can add tools. You can erase. This is like the brush. You can highlight the drawing tool where you can add like check marks. So you can do stuff like that. You can add images, stamps. One thing about stamps is you can create custom stamps, which is pretty cool. However, they don't save. So if you keep continuing to create custom stamps, they don't save at the bottom. However, there is stamps that are already created if you want to use those instead. Comment bubbles. So there's already a couple comments made in here, a couple stamps made. When it comes to comments, a couple things. So if you click on the comment bubble, and so you want to place it here and you type in great work and you press save. There's no option to edit. So the only way to do it is to just delete it and restart. Yeah, so if you make a spelling mistake in this case, then you would just have to delete the comment, press this little garbage can, and then redo it. Another thing that I wanted to mention is, let's say you have a comment underneath this comment. So let's say you say, can't wait to see your second report, and you press reply. Once you download this document, pressing the download up here, the students will only be able to see that first comment. They won't be able to see that second one. So when using comment bubbles, just put one comment per comment bubble. So just something to keep in mind when grading. The last thing I wanted to mention, when it comes to annotations that have been made by other users, you aren't able to delete them. So for example, in this case, I have Zorka, who's a teaching assistant in this course. She made a couple annotations, and let's say I wasn't happy with where this check mark is and I want to move it over here instead. It looks like it's shifted, but once I refresh my screen, this will go back to its original spot. So same thing with the comments. You can't delete the comments. There's no garbage can to it. So the only way that these can go away if you want them to disappear is for Zorka to come back here and get rid of them. So same thing with annotations when it comes to drawing. You can try to use the eraser button to erase it, and it might look like it went away, but once you press refresh, it'll all come back. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. You can also see the outline and annotations here, which is pretty cool. So once you're happy with the annotations and you've done all the grading, you can put the grade in. So I thought that they did pretty good. I'll give them an 8.5 out of 10. You can provide feedback to the learner. Like Nuit mentioned, you can add notes, private notes to the grading team, and you can press submit once you are ready. So once you press submit, it disappears from the needs grading. And if you go to the full grade center, you will see that kind of like an Excel sheet of all the different grades posted, and you will be able to see the ones that you've already graded. So this is the one that we just did, 8.5. So that is how you create and grade an assignment. I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to do our third activity. I'm going to pull up this PowerPoint here in one sec. Okay, so activity 3A, so you're going to go into your sandbox and grade and provide feedback on an assignment. So play around with the BB Annotate tool, get comfortable with it. You have 5 minutes. Right now it's 3:55, so we'll be back at 4 o'clock. I see a few of you mentioned not having to be able to see the document. That's okay. If you want, I'll give you a little bit extra time. You can go ahead and, I don't know if you have an assignment created. If you want to create your own assignment and go into your student preview, submit an assignment like a document from your computer and grade that instead. You can do that as well. I'll give you some time to create an assignment if you want. If you don't have time, I'm trying to think of how we could do this. Yeah, I would say try to go ahead and create an assignment. And then if you have time after the workshop to go ahead and use your sandbox to submit a file from your computer and use, you go into the needs grading and grade your own document. I'm not too sure why that is happening. I apologize. It might have just been an issue when it came to downloading your sandboxes. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes to work on creating an assignment instead. We'll come back around 4:03. Mackenzie, you're okay. At the end of the session, if you want to stay back, I can help you create an assignment at the end, just because we are going to move on to the next topic in a minute.
All right, everyone, it is 4:03. Now we are going to move ahead to the next topic, which is test. This is one of the popular, I would say, assessment tool that we have in Blackboard. There are different stages in a test. The first stage is creating a test. This is done in the back end. This is typically done by an instructor or their teaching staff. This is done in the back end and it is not visible to student. The second stage is to deploy those questions on in the content area, and then it is visible to student. Once it is visible, students take the test and then submit their responses. Once they submit it, that is populated under needs grading, and then instructor and their teaching staff would grade it and then post their grades. And once it is posted, students can then view their grades under my grades. So these are the stages of test. There are 17 kind of questions type in test tool. Most of them are automatically graded. However, there are few such as short answers, essay type, and then file responses. Those question types should be manually graded. And out of these 17 questions type, five question type are mobile friendly, whereas the other are not. So if you have any non-mobile friendly question type in your test, we strongly recommend that you let your student know that they have to use computers in order to take the test. And you can also enable feedback and then give them feedbacks on individual questions or on the test overall. And I said earlier that the feedbacks will be constructive and formative. So this, the image right here is the grading screen that you see while grading submission for a test. The panel that you see right here is called Test Information Panel. You can expand or contract that panel, which I'll show you while I will do the demonstration. And this test information panel will reveal some of the important information about that particular submission. Like you can see how many minutes or how many hours did they take to take the test, and then you can also access their log, which will give you a breakdown of how many minutes or seconds that they spent on each and individual question. You can also clear attempt, but we strongly recommend, I cannot emphasize strongly enough, we do not recommend you use a clear attempt, because once you use a clear attempt, it'll wipe off their submission. So we do not recommend using clear attempt. If you wish to give them an extra attempt, if you wish to give your student an extra attempt, you can always add them under test availability exception under test edit option. And I repeat, we do not recommend you using clear attempt. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to again switch back to my demo course and then quickly show you a little bit about test, the back end of it, how you would deploy it, but not in detail. Then I'll go into how you could grade the test in a little bit more detail. So now I'm gonna switch my screen. Allow me some time to do that. Yep, so I am in my demo sandbox course. So now what I'll do is I will first show you where you can create a test question. So as I said earlier, that is done in the backend and is not visible to your student. It is only visible to you and your teaching staffs. So under course tools, you can go to test surveys and pool, and then to tests, and then build a test from here. This is called a test canvas. You would see the test that you have created, and you'll also see the status if it is deployed or not. If it is deployed, you would see where it is deployed, and if it is not deployed, it will be marked as no. So this is the test canvas where you can build the test. Due to the time scope of this presentation, I'm not going to go into the detail, but if you're interested, we have done so many seminars. We have wiki articles that talks about it. My teammate would shortly send you those links in the chat. Now, this is the first test, which is creating a test, and then you can deploy the test in your content area. Let's say this is the content area that you want to use. You can then deploy the test. Like we already have one sample test that is already deployed. If you want to deploy another one, you can always deploy it by going into assessment and then test, and then choosing that test. And I'm not going to go into the detail again. Now what I'll do is I do have a sample response for one of my sample tests. I will create that sample test for you. So again, you can access the submissions from needs grading or full grade center. Let me go to needs grading. You can find all the submissions that needs your attention or that needs grading under this needs grading page. And for this demo course, we just have 5 submissions: one discussion board, one assignment, and 2 tests. Let's say you have a big class, hundreds of students, and then you have uh, numerous rows, and this needs grading page might sometimes look messy. So but don't worry, you can always filter the needs grading page using this filter option here. So what I'll do is I just want nothing else, so I'll just select test under category and then hit go, and then I'll only see those 2 test responses. This is how you can filter your needs grading page if in case it is messy. Now, in order to access that submission, as I showed you earlier, you can directly click on that user attempt, or you can access this option from here. In this case, I'll use grade all users. That'll take me to their test submission page, and I can navigate from one student to another using this navigation bar right here. So now this is the test information panel that I was talking earlier. So you can expand this or contract this, and under this test information panel, you can always access the log, which will give you a breakdown on for each question. It'll show you how many seconds they spent for each question. This is not accurate, but it gives you an idea. And yes, do not use clear attempt. Now, as I said earlier, there are most of the question types are automatically graded. Like you see here, multiple choice question, it is automatically graded. However, there are few question type that needs manual grading, such as this essay type question. So the answer, I am satisfied. Now what I'll do is I'll give them point out of 10. I'll give them 9 out of 10, give them a feedback, and move on to the next question. Similar to the first one, again, this is a short answer question, and it again needs manual grading. So I'll again give them 9 out of 10, and then up and move on to the next one. Again, these other question type are automatically graded, so I don't have to worry about that. I'll just check it, and then you can use this feedback box to give them feedback on overall test, and you can use this grading note section to write down a note for your own teaching staff. Again, this is a private note section, and this is only visible to your teaching staff. Once you're done, you'll hit save and exit. Once you mark something, it disappears out of a needs grading, but again, you can always access them from full grade center. I'll show you how to access that from full grade center. I'll click on full grade center, and then from there navigate to that particular test column, which is this one, and then just beside this number you'd see that gray chevron. Click on that, and then you can go to attempts, and then again they'll take you back to the attempt screen right here. Now, one thing I would have to show you in this test is that how you could grade a by question. So let me exit this, and let me go back to needs grading again. So let's consider a scenario. In this case, you just have two submission for a particular test, but let's consider a scenario where you have hundreds of students, and out of in that test, one particular question is incorrect. Now you want to go back into the test and then give them full score for that particular question because the question was incorrect in the first place. So how do you do that? You can do that by coming into grade needs grading and then go to that test and then access this option which is grade by question. It'll then take you to the test and then all the questions that was there in the test, and then it'll show you the number of responses. Let's say this first question was incorrect. The option that you gave was incorrect. So now what you want to do is you want to go back in and then give them a full score for their attempt. So you go back, click on this responses. They'll show all the responses on the same screen, and then you want to edit that and then give them full score. So you would use grade by question it's in such scenarios, and that is pretty much about tests and then how you would grade tests. So now I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then move back to the switch back to the presentation. So now what we'll do is we will it's your turn now to practice this exercise 4. Again, the detail is given in your exercise sheet, and yeah, if you have any question you can always post it in the chat. The time is 4:15. We'll be back at 4:20. All right, everyone, the time is 4:20. I hope you guys had enough time to finish this exercise, and even if not, you can always try that out in your own time. So let's move on to our last topic, which is overview of a grade center. I will briefly um, give you some tips and tricks to say about grade center. I will give you a brief demonstration where I'll walk you through some of the important things that you need to know in grade center. So whenever you create an assignment or test or any of the assessment tool, that automatically creates a grade center column in your course, in your grade center. And by default, if you don't change any settings, the column is automatically visible to student. And then if you don't wish to make it visible, you can always make it unavailable. And then you can also create some manual columns in Grade Center. As I said earlier, once you create any assessment tool, it'll automatically create a column in your Grade Center. But again, if you wish to create other columns, manual column, let's say for some kind of bonus activities, you can always create a manual column in the Grade Center, which I'll show you a little later while when I'll demonstrate in my demo course website. And I'll also show you view grade details panels and what are the options that you get. And then I'll also again touch upon why we recommend not to clear attempt while I'll do the demonstration. So now let me switch back to my demo course website and show you those tips and tricks for Grade Center. Okay. Yep. So this is my demo course again. Now let me go to Grade Center and then full Grade Center. So this is how a typical Grade Center would look like. And then if you keep on adding any kind of assessment tool, they'll create a column and then keep adding it or keep appending it into the right hand side. And these columns are visible to student. But if you wish not to make it visible, you can always hide it from student. To do that, you can click on this little chevron and then click on hide from student, and a little black circle with a red line would appear. That means it is not visible to student. And once you are done updating scores for everyone, you can then again come back in here and then make it visible to student. This is how you would hide or unhide a column from your student. Now you can always, as I said, create some columns. You can either create a manual column or this calculated column. Let me, for the simplicity of this demonstration, I'll create a normal column, but you can create a calculated column to calculate average to find out maximum or minimum. You can also create a total column or some other complex total column. I'll not go into the detail about these calculated column, but if you're interested to learn more, we do have resources created for it. For this demo, I'll create a simple column and then name it, let's say, bonus column. I will skip the Grade Center name and description, and you can choose your primary and secondary display. For this purpose, I'll keep it default, which is score. And then for point possible in this instance, for this instance, it is 2. And then for the bonus, I really don't need to add rubric, but again, if you want to, if you need to, you can always add that. And yes, I want to use this in Grade Center calculation. And then you can either, if you keep it as default, it'll be by default visible to student. But again, if you select this no here, it won't be available to student. You don't have to go back in Grade Center and then hide it again. You can always choose while creating a column and submit. This is how you typically create a column, and then if you want to enter a score in that cell, you can always, it's simple, just double click or single click and then give the score, and hit enter. So this is how you would create a manual column and then add a score in that column. The next thing that I would want to show you is view grade details section. So let's view the grade details of that test, that sample test, which I graded earlier. So I'll go into that cell again. Just beside the number, I would find that little chevron and click on that view grade details section. This will open up the grade detail page here, and then you would see the score. You can view the attempt. That'll again take you to the same screen that I showed you in my previous demonstration. And from here you can again either clear attempt, view attempt, or ignore attempt. And again, I highly recommend not to use clear attempt. Instead, use ignore attempt. You can ignore the attempt. If you ignore the attempt would still be there, and you can always revert back to, you can always refer to if you need to. But if you clear the attempt, it will disappear, and then we cannot get it back or retrieve it back. So the best practice is to ignore the attempt and then give them an extra attempt from a test options. So that is pretty much about grade center. We don't have a practice exercise for grade center. I will now pass on to my teammate Ronak.
Thanks, Nuit. So that just about wraps up our session today. So a couple of links that I wanted to bring to your attention. So where you can find support with Blackboard on campus. So if you run into issues or aren't sure how to do something, you can always open a ticket at uwindsor.ca/BB help, and someone will get back to you soon. You can always visit our virtual help desk Monday to Friday from 8:30 to 4:30 starting next Monday. Windsor Blackboard Wiki, we have a bunch of wiki pages, resources that are useful to go through step-by-step processes of certain things that you want to learn through Blackboard. So those are super useful. There's the link as well posted. I will be sending this slideshow out to you so you have access to these links. There's self-paced Blackboard courses that you can also register yourself in and do it at your own pace. Comes with a bunch of videos and different things and different specific things you can learn in Blackboard. And if none of those have solved your issue, you can always go to Blackboard itself, their help pages, and ask and see if you can find the answer there as well. So I just wanted to thank you all for attending our session. I'm going to enable your mics now. If you have any questions, now is the time to ask them. I'm going to stop the recording.